1/4 of all people will experience a mental health problem in their lives.
75% of these problems will be established by the age of 24. At university, issues surrounding student wellbeing are rife.
Warwick University was ranked in the bottom 10% of British universities when it comes to their wellbeing services. The university spent £12 per pupil on counselling services.
The UK average? 22. We spoke with wellbeing officers, service providers and students themselves to provide a comprehensive account of dealing with your mental health at university.
To begin with, we sat down with Tiona Holgate, the Welfare and Campaign Sabbatical Officer of Warwick Students' Union, to try and get to the bottom of what is going on.
How would you describe your role to everyone watching?
My role is very varied. So the title is Welfare and Campaigns, and obviously with the officers, campaigns sort of fit into all of our remit because like the nature of the political sort of sphere in the SU is that everyone is running campaigns on what's important to them. There's different elements to the role. So like we're trustees of the SU, and obviously day to day I'm supporting students, but also working on like policy work in university committees. So like there's so much like different elements of the role, which mean that there are lots of different ways you can sort of push your agenda or things that are important to you. There are different elements.
When it comes to being a representative of students towards the university, are there any sort of problems that you ever have to come across when dealing with them, ways that you maybe didn't expect before you took this role on?
I think I always expected that the point of the SU is to be the student voice, so I always knew that there'd be like a very big need for that, and I didn't think it would necessarily be an easy dynamic to like explore. The main thing I think that's important is communication, so whether that's us communicating to them what students actually experience or what our actual issues are and showing them like where they don't necessarily always fit in line. So it can be tricky sometimes in order to just reaffirming things. So I think the main problem is just making sure that our voices are heard as much as possible. But I think that this year in particular, like the relationship is getting stronger. They want to hear what we have to say. Like we meet with them very regularly.
More specifically, what services are available to a student that's maybe struggling and doesn't know where to look for their first point of contact? Yeah,
so it depends on if it's say like an emergency or non-emergency. If it was something that you thought, okay, like I'm not safe or someone isn't safe, the best place to go is campus security. Even if it was like a health and safety issue, they can get ambulances quick enough for you, that kind of stuff. In terms of like mental health support generally, the advice centre are great. They can help you with literally advice, so financial advice, housing advice, academic advice in terms of mitigation and that kind of thing. They're really great for that. In terms of actual counselling is wellbeing support services. So if you go in them, they recently moved to Centre House. They used to be all over campus. Now they're all in one place. So if you go into Centre House at any time of the day, they're there to help you.
Hi, I'm Joelle. I am a history student and in my 4th year. I really only started recognising my mental health in 2nd year. I didn't really realise the state of it until about term 2 in 2nd year. I didn't really realise that I was acting weird until about 4 months of acting weird. So I just wasn't doing any uni work at all. It just wasn't a priority. Had really bad social anxiety, felt crap about myself all the time, really struggled to get out of bed, spent a lot of time in my room, not speaking to people, not communicating to people, and just feeling really shit. And also going to the pub after uni and drinking so much that I knew I wouldn't be able to do any uni work the next day, so I'd like create excuses for myself to feel like this. I came back after Christmas and was like, I'm sick of feeling shit, I'm sick of having panic attacks all the time, I'm sick of like just walking down the street, or like getting off the U1 and then walking down the road and not bursting into tears for literally no reason. I was just sick of it. So I went to the GP, which I was really scared about. Because I was scared that somebody would tell me that I was depressed and then it would be real and then I'd have to deal with it. but then also I was scared that somebody would tell me I wasn't depressed or I was fine, and then I'd have to deal with that. I'm just like making up all these things in my head that aren't real. So yeah, I went to doctors, said that I was depressed and that I was suffering with anxiety, which was heavy but also a massive relief. So I got in contact with Wellbeing Services for counselling, which, if I'm honest, took a long time to come into fruition. So I think I went to go see the GP maybe in like January time, went to go book an appointment maybe the end of January, February, and I didn't get an appointment until June, which obviously is quite a long time to not be seeing anyone or getting any kind of help. In that sense, I kind of took it on myself. I don't even know what I did. I started sleeping and like having a sleep routine, trying to stretch before bed, eat better, exercise more, and kind of put uni on the back burner and just sort of focused on living. I'm glad that I did eventually have my appointments, and even though I didn't end up having many because the year ended, I'm glad that I had them. They were really helpful. Yeah, it's just so nice to have a space where you can go into a room and talk about everything and be really vulnerable, and then shut the door and leave and let that be someone else's problem now.
And what kind of therapy was it in particular?
It was one-on-one, like counselling. And I had that on a weekly basis, maybe every other week. But it was just really like helpful, and it taught me to be more reflective. That before I'd go in, I'd try to like bring things and think things through, and then afterwards I'd always sit down and like write a reflective piece on how I was feeling. So no, the services were good. They were really helpful to me.
If you could write a letter to yourself 4 years ago, what would be in it?
Mental health is a thing that everyone has and that you have, and to keep check on it, like on a regular basis, just to keep yourself in check, and like not to freak out if you're not feeling great. Like if you check in with yourself and you're not feeling great, don't freak out, because it's very normal.
What changed that you thought kind of got you back on track?
A sleep schedule and sleep routine. So I would brush my teeth, light a candle, stretch, read a book, and then go to bed. And I would try and drink a cup of tea, of course. That's not really a question, to be honest. But I would do that every night to sort of regulate my sleep and to make sleep like a positive thing. I am currently signed up for counselling, and I have my first session of the year next week, which is exciting. Just to keep myself in check and to force myself to keep myself in check. Not that I feel like I necessarily have an issue going on right now that needs to be addressed, but it's just good to have a space to chat and make sure everything is okay, because sometimes things aren't and you don't realise it. So having a space to talk to somebody that can highlight things that you might not see before they're a problem is good.
You have a conversation with them for like 20 minutes, they chat about what the problems are, and then they refer you to the area that you need. So if it's counselling or like psychotherapy, then they organise all of that. So they're fantastic. Then there is Nightline, who are there just for like confidential advice, and that's more of like a venting service. You can get things off your chest, but obviously they're not trained counsellors, so it's important that you know what you need.
Nightline is a student-run, peer-to-peer listening service. It's all voluntary. Everybody that works with us is a student at Warwick Nightline. It's open from 9 p.m. till 9 a.m. every night of term. We take calls, we take drop-ins, we take instant messages, and basically what we do is we're here to listen to students, make them feel like they've got someone to talk to. We don't give advice, so we're a non-judgmental and non-advisory service, but we can signpost callers to other services that can give advice if they need that. I feel like it sounds a bit cliche, but one of the things that all of our volunteers have in common is just like a genuine desire to help people. In terms of joining us specifically, we have sign-ups at the start of week 3, and then we take most of the people that have signed up to our training weekend. So our training is definitely sufficient for what we do, but it is less than it would be if you were training for an advisory service.
Nightline is a great place because there is no next step that is going to be forced upon you. We're never going to tell you what to do. We're never going to judge you. There's no pressure for you to do or say anything that you don't want to. It's not just mental health. People come and talk to us about all sorts of things. We are here to listen. There's nothing that you can say to us that will shock us or make us judge you or anything like that. We just know how important it is and how helpful it is to be listened to.
One of the attractive parts of our service, particularly for people who struggle to open up, is that we as volunteers are anonymous. We never ask for the identity of a caller, and everything that comes to us through calls is completely confidential. We never go to the university to report back on content of calls, and so I think when people are struggling to open up, this can be a great place to come to for the first time. We let the caller guide the call themselves, so they can talk about whatever they want to.
And at the end of the day, we are just uni students that are trying to be there for our peers and be a listening ear. We're not qualified to give loads of advice or any advice really. The whole point of us being here is literally just to listen, and hopefully that's as helpful to people as we know it can be.
But what, without being too specific, are the general themes of the calls you receive?
We get a real variety of things. People will talk about flatmate issues, friends, family. Being homesick, of course, is quite a big one at the start of term, particularly for first years.
Health, alcohol, money.
Yeah.
There is such a range of things, and we're just as happy to take a call on someone who is feeling lonely and wants some company walking home from a night out as we are taking a call from someone who's thinking about ending their own life. So there's nothing that we won't talk about. There will be times of the year that are a little bit busier, so maybe the beginning of the year when people are feeling a bit homesick. January exams and term 3 sometimes a little bit busier, but other than that we don't really have a pattern of kind of the frequency of calls at any given time.
The most important thing that I would say in terms of trying to support your friends, the thing that Nightline has taught me the most is you should listen more than you speak. When somebody's talking about something like mental health, when somebody's talking about any issue that's going on in their life, it can feel as if you, particularly with friends, you can want to sort of jump in and be like, I care about you, so I want to fix that for you. But you should definitely listen to them and let them talk about the way they're feeling before you try to advise them or support them in that sense. Every call that we have is special to us in the sense that we feel like we're making a difference.
The SU have been really supportive actually. We've been really lucky to have an SU that's financially supportive, and if we go to them with any issues they're always really happy to give us advice and help us out. So a lot
of other nightlines around the country do their own fundraising, but we're really lucky in that sense that the SU give us all of our funding through the year, so it means that we can really focus on our service rather than needing to raise money.
What else? We have this new thing called the Big White Wall, which is an online forum. It's anonymous completely. You set up an account using your Warwick email, and you basically have a profile. You can vent at this wall 24/7. Counsellors can respond to you, but they don't know who you are. You can build community, you can track progress, and do personal self-assessments on your mental health, and it will sort of highlight things that are important and you need to focus on more. There are self-help courses, community courses, there's loads on there, so that's really, really good, and that only came in a few weeks ago, so that's available for Warwick students as well. I'm able to support on loads of different things, and obviously whoever the office is at the time. We can signpost to all services that are available, and also physically help you book appointments for staff and go to things with you for some more support.
Loads of those sound absolutely great and fantastic. Do you fear that a lot of the services, like whether it's counselling or whether it's stress management, are kind of ways of dealing within a system that is broken in itself, rather than actually challenging some of the structures and the relationships between our work and our sort of personal life that isn't really properly being addressed through a lot of this?
So there's a few things there. Yeah, definitely. So I would say the university life, students often say the most important thing for them is just surviving, which is horrible, but like a really harsh reality, and the students are like, how can I just like get through, like what can I do to get by? And that is where counselling and those things are useful. I would say that our role as sort of leaders in like a different way is to fight those structural things. So like I'm doing lots of work on wellbeing, and like if their services are most as effective as they can be. There are other learning circles and task forces that are in the university that are working at a much higher level. So I'm working with a group called We're Here, which is like the Warwick International Higher Education Academy. And we have some wellbeing learning circles which are literally tackling how can we make our modules most suitable for students' wellbeing. Structurally, how does the governance work? In the classroom, how does that work? So there's definitely an element of both. It's difficult for students to see that stuff is happening without us like shouting about it. The day-to-day stuff is really good, but there's definitely a wider structural problem in terms of social pressures in general in succeeding, and the university environment is like so rife for that.
Well, something I just wanted to touch on was that I think there was quite a remarkable report in 2016 about the way Warwick tackled mental health back then, and it said that there was £12 being spent per student, compared to about £22 with the average they collected from the 30 universities. I think we were ranked about 27th out of 30 if you took a holistic view of everything being done surrounding mental health. Has anything been done since then? I know you touched on it there, but has there been a conversion in how Warwick treats mental health?
Yeah, so the university are very aware of that, and the whole wellbeing restructure which happened this over the summer was a huge response to that. Students were finding waiting times for like 6-7 weeks, which is like, there's no point going for a service if you can't access it. And now that's down to 2 weeks. So there have been a lot of changes in the way of accessing those services and making it easier. Some people were not really sure how they felt about email counselling, so now you can always have that appointment for 20 minutes. So there have been a lot of changes made. In terms of the sort of pricing, other universities have up to like £40 spent on their students, and we're all aware of how that is a big issue. And one of our team priorities for the year is a mental health campaign, which is for students to be aware of what's available to them, but also for the university to know like this is a really big issue. So it's begun, but we're keeping pushing on that one.
And funding, obviously, is something that's just been brought up there. What do you think the effect of government policy in the past decade or so has done to transform the kind of mental health problems that we're talking about today? For students, more specifically.
So obviously, in terms of like, if you talk about government funding and services in general, mental health and physical health are equally as important as each other. So when the NHS is under pressure, it's under pressure for our mental health as well as our physical health. And that is where the university sort of has to step in, because the local authorities don't have the capacity to handle like the students that we have. There's 28,000 of us. And the chances of us needing support are really high. Government policy in general, I think that everything is kind of marketised in a way, which is a broad statement to make, but in the sense that even with self-help, it's glorified, and that like, oh my god, help yourself, and that is a really good thing, but it's important that we know that it's like a fundamental need and a fundamental right, and not like a fun thing to have. And I know there's lots of more like self-help apps and that kind of thing that, you know, students will pay for, which are really useful, but I think that the government shouldn't be under the impression that like that's going to fill the gap of other things that they need to be doing, you know. As a union and a university, when we highlight that wellbeing is like a spectrum, mental health isn't just having a mental illness diagnosed, it is your general ability to do well and like cope with stress and all those other things. So when we highlight that it's a day-to-day problem, hopefully people understand that it's not their fault, you know, and it's the world. It's very much the world.
We realise that it's not just, you know, Warwick Centre, this is a national problem or a global issue too. So I think we'd probably all agree that the major like antecedent to suicide would be like major depression. Since 2006, the amount of first years revealing mental health problems has increased from around 3,000 to 15,000. So that's a 5-fold increase. But the increase in suicides there hasn't actually been one. It's been a slight decrease, if anything, since the spike in 2005. And I just wanted to hear your views on that. We hear a lot about this, the epidemic, but we don't see that revealed in the suicide statistics. So why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I guess if young people are disclosing more that they have an issue, then hopefully they're getting help sooner, which prevents that developing further. So I'd say that students not disclosing a problem would mean that they're probably suffering in silence, and which can lead to things such as suicide. Whereas if they are saying, I have mental illness, then hopefully they're getting the resources to help sort of manage and tackle that, so that it doesn't get to that stage. I don't know if that
makes complete sense.
I mean, and there's always, we were just talking about before, this very weird tension between reported incidences of something, because you can interpret those results in very different ways. You can say rising hate crime or rising reported problems with mental health mean that we're in a society that is more racist or filled with more bigotry, and one that is more there's worse well-being. But you can look at it the other way, which is that there's been a space created for people to feel comfortable to talk about their feelings, if that makes sense. So I don't know how you can actually identify how much is it, there's reported mental health problem rising, because actually we've created an atmosphere where people feel more comfortable coming forward and openly, which is almost a good thing. So it's kind of weird. Do we say rising reports is a good thing, or is it a bad thing? It's really difficult to kind of put your finger on it.
My name's Jacob, and I'm a fourth year PPE student here at the University of Warwick.
The struggles really started in around February of my second year. Kind of throughout the year I'd had some kind of personal problems going on, relationships and with my family and so on. But then February was probably the moment where things started, I felt they were starting to go wrong. I'd committed to a lot of things for term 1 and term 2 in terms of musical projects and so on. And then all of a sudden they sort of stopped, and they ended, and I had this huge gulf in my life. I lost interest in meeting up with friends, lost interest in really sort of going out. I'd isolate myself quite a bit, feel lonely sort of on my own and so on. And really the only thing that kept me going through that time was the work I had for my degree. I was committed to still doing that. I wanted to do well in it. And then it sort of got to, I would say, about the second week of term 3, and that was when sort of things started to go wrong. I just felt that was a moment where I had to do something about this. Otherwise we were going to go, progress into a spiral where things were about to, turn a lot worse than they were. So that was when I went to the university and I sought help for the problems I was facing. No one would have had any inclination, because when I was with people, I simply kind of just pretended to be someone that I wasn't at that point. I pretended to be the Jacob that they always knew. And the way I describe it is a bit like, it's as if someone has sort of put a lump of sort of tar on your chest, and you just feel so weighed down, as if you can't escape from it. And it's kind of that's the only way in which I felt. Just I'd constantly feel anxious wherever I was. This would pull me down. I'd feel incredibly nervous. I'd cry a lot. Cry myself to sleep. And really sort of you just feel so negative about everything. There was nothing good about the world, nothing good about your life. And it was really when that element started to kick in, when you start to question, is there much point to what I'm doing? I think that was the key moment for me. And luckily I was just about able to realise, you've got to do something about this, Jacob. This can't go on. I went to the university, so to the Wellbeing Centre there. The experience was generally positive. What I think the most important thing for me, I found at that point, was I was probably there for God knows how long. It must have been well over an hour, and just talking to someone in confidence, knowing that it's a kind of non-judgmental sort of scenario, and just being able to know that whatever's said in that room and with that person is not going to be sort of spread now kind of without you wanting it to be. It was just so nice to be able to, it was like opening a pressure valve. It was just being able to just release everything, everything I'd been going through over, my time at university, things that I thought stretched before university, all of these kind of problems. It was just so good to be able to chat with someone and then agree upon some sort of path. And I spend a lot less time worrying about things. There's a lot of things that in the past I would have got very stressed out about. I would have got more stressed out about what other people think of me, for example. I would have thought about how the world perceives me, and it's still something that I struggle with. It's not something that has gone, but that is probably the big thing. I have a greater probably acknowledgement of what matters, what really matters in life. You shouldn't go through life trying to get everyone to like you. There are people who will disagree with you on lots of things, and people who won't maybe share the same opinions or views, and that's just it, really. And I would just say to any guys who are watching, it gets better, but please just speak to someone, just whoever it is, whether it be a close friend or whether it be someone you've even never met. Just speak to someone about how you're feeling, because it always gets better. I'm in a far better place now, and I'm so glad that I spoke out, because I look now at other, you always see these sort of awful stories about people who haven't made it, who haven't managed to win this battle, and it's really terrible. So please just speak to someone about it and don't be ashamed of it.
Precisely, and even in terms of when we promote services that are available to students, we expect that there'd be a rise and then a fall, in the sense that once we know that they're better, waiting times are great, people will be like, yeah, I'm going to go and get help. Hopefully that peak shows that people are getting help, but then eventually it should decrease when, and that when the general dialogue has changed. So it's literally impossible to tell exactly what is changing and if it's useful or if it's not, because the numbers are numbers, and it's very difficult to see the qualitative.
I was just thinking more about the fact that when we think about elite institutions, we think sometimes about the levels of, if it's institutional sexism or institutional racism, and the different mental health experiences of people of colour. How have you have you found that, firstly, in terms of the way in which race shapes your mental health experience at university, and what are the university doing to try to combat those problems?
It definitely does have a very big impact, not just in terms of being at university, but just going through life. And I think that people are aware of the fact that there are big differences across the board. Personally, yeah, definitely have experienced that. And even statistically, black women are most likely to experience PTSD other than any other group, and that is because of trauma, because we're exposed to sexual violence more. There's other elements that come into that structurally, and obviously a university is a microcosm of the wider world, so whatever's going on out there, it's going to happen here too. So it's important that we recognise that. In terms of the university, I've been doing some work this year on culturally competent care, and that is basically how mental health services can support students no matter what it is that they're facing. And that is, if students are experiencing homophobia, then the people they're talking to understand that that's a problem, so they can help them, and that the barrier isn't there before they've even got the support. No, but it is definitely a wide issue, and it's important that we know Warwick is very diverse, and we always Warwick's so diverse, we love it, but if we aren't changing to suit that, so that our students actually can get through university, then there's literally no point.
There was a report released recently regarding how males predominate in suicide in this country, and how it was 75% males that are making up the suicides. And we see the same in the US as well, in a lot of the Western world. Do we find the same things here at university?
We try and make it try and highlight how important it is that everyone talks, and we try to de-gender it, because it's it's a social pressure, and university, as I was saying, is no different. But yeah, I think it's important that we're aware that the issues that students face, they can be different across different identities, but some of them are fundamental to everyone, like work pressures, financial pressures. Those things don't discriminate. They're happening regardless. So yeah, I know that we last year had a big thing about it takes balls to talk and trying to highlight the fact that like men can get help too. And it almost seems silly to be like, yeah, by the way, like men can get help because like, of course, but it is mainly about making sure that people feel comfortable and confident to do that.
Yeah, and I imagine that's why the anonymity schemes are often quite useful.
They're fantastic.
Because I sometimes find myself, in terms of being able to find the right people to talk to about my own problems is really hard, and you have this kind of conception of yourself that you want to sort of save face and not be kind of, you know, the person that you actually are. My name's Tom Westgarth. I'm a fourth year PPE student at Warwick University, and last year I was diagnosed with severe depression and mild anxiety disorder. I've always been somebody that would have sad days and never really knew why, and then towards the end of my second year of uni I was just doing too many things. I'd burnt out, I had lost all appetite, I was sad all of the time, I didn't feel like I had any purpose and meaning in my life, and it was then catalysed by the fact that I worked at an investment bank in a very stressful internship over that summer, and it made me feel even more worthless. I was isolated, felt like there was no point in really contributing to society. I felt worthless, and it was a tough time. And I remember very vividly being sat in, near my work, and like ringing up my dad and just like opening up and just crying to him. I'd never really told him how I'd felt, and he said, you need to see someone, you need to get some help, it can't continue like this. When you feel worthless, you're like, well, why would anyone want to listen to me anyway? But I had always at school felt like that in some way, shape or form. I was really badly bullied at school. Even after talking to my dad, I still wasn't sure. I spoke to my manager at work, who was really, really helpful. And I got loads of support from my work colleagues. And I just thought maybe this was just a blip. It was something that would be okay. But even once my internship finished, it was another excuse. It was, once this is done, I'll be fine. I never really came to terms with the fact that I wasn't okay. Wouldn't eat, couldn't sleep, wouldn't want to get out of bed. I'd lie there at 6 o'clock in the morning for an hour to just motivate myself to get out of bed. I cried a lot. I withdrew from society. I feel like I'm quite a sociable person normally, and to be able to save face and be that person that people know me to be was exhausting. You're constantly having to be somebody you're not, hiding from the true you, and I lacked confidence. I didn't feel like people would want to spend time with me. I didn't feel like people would want to employ me, people would want me to be part of their lives. And you felt guilty as well, because I'm so privileged in so many different ways, and the fact that I'm able to live the life that I live I'm in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. I've had two parents that love each other. I've had all these amazing opportunities, and I almost felt like I was letting myself down by feeling sad. You do get that a bit at university, where you're told, well, you're a straight white man, that the world's your oyster, you can do whatever you want. And I'm not denying the advantages that I've had because of those traits, but that doesn't mean the problems don't exist. I was very lucky at my job. I had private healthcare as a perk of my job, and I saw a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with depression and anxiety. The diagnosis itself was a weight off my shoulders. I'm somebody that is quite methodical and scientific, and to be told you have depression was a relief for me. I was subscribed medication. I met a fantastic doctor there, and I had this newfound confidence that there was light at the end of the tunnel. Before, I didn't think there was. for about, I couldn't remember the last time I'd ever been happy. With the therapy, I didn't find that useful. I'd find myself walking into the room and just coming out feeling worse, because you just cry and cry and cry, and it's not the same for everyone, but for me personally, I felt so vulnerable and laid bare for this stranger to sit there and listen to me wail and moan about my life. I started to feel better probably in around February of this year. So I'd had about a year, 12 months of anxiety and then real misery. But what really helped me, I think, was having medication. I was on antidepressants, still am. I'm coming off them at the moment. I started eating properly. I'd exercise, runs. I got injured and couldn't play football all summer, and I think that was something that really was probably harmful. When something goes wrong in your life and you have a really bad day, whether you've gone out the night before and you feel really hungover, or something's gone wrong in terms of a career ambition or dream or goal that you have, and then suddenly you feel really, really down again, and you just think, oh my God, I could return in this spiral. But part of me then, the rational part of me thinks, that's just life. I'm not 100% at all, but life is a struggle at times, and everybody goes through it. Being happy isn't being happy 100% of the time. You can only be happy because you know what sadness is. Don't stress about little things if possible. What the experience has taught me is that all the things that you thought were problems before, your deadlines, your assignments, careers applications, it's irrelevant. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. What matters is that you're happy and living a life that has purpose and meaning. It might be a very optimistic view of human nature and maybe slightly utopian, but people in this world are good, and you need to give people the benefit of the doubt, because you never know what's going on in someone's mind. They can be the most popular, smart, active person in the world, and it could all be a complete farce. And the only reason you'll be able to find out is if you listen and you have conversations.
As a man, in the society we live in, how has it felt opening up about your mental health?
There is this unease and tension that you don't want to expose the true you. But what I've come to realise is that it's a central part of masculinity. We need what it means to be a man, to understand acknowledging your flaws and weaknesses, helping other people. Being courageous isn't bottling everything up. It's knowing when the right time to stop is, or when to step in and help. This is what it should mean to be a bloke and to be a man in the 21st century, not this kind of butch, stiff upper lip type that we traditionally associated with. Which is kind of a bit deep, but you know.
It's honestly exactly true. That's why the Big White Wall is really good, because it's completely anonymous and you can build up a whole profile for yourself and track your progress. But no one knows that it's you. So it's a good way to be I'm doing great, and no one really has to know, because it's no one's business, to be honest.
I didn't think it'd be right to kind of have a discussion about sort of the welfare of students without drawing upon the whole group chat scandal that sort of kind of shrouded the uni in the past couple of years. And what I wanted to ask was, what frameworks have the university put in place in order to make sure that victims of whether it's harassment or sexual violence or these kinds of really sort of horrible messages, how can we make sure that these people are protected or these events don't happen again?
Yeah, well, there's a few things in place. The university has written a new sexual misconduct policy, which we didn't have a specific one before. So that was fed in from the Students' Union, a group of over 50 individuals that helped to write that, and that is now complete. So that is available, which goes into much more detail about what we tolerate, what we don't tolerate. Also, we have some new guiding principles. There's 5 different principles which are literally all governed by behaviour at Warwick and what behaviour we tolerate and what behaviour we don't tolerate. Mirroring that is an online course which students are encouraged to fill out. So we've had over 4,000 students already complete that who've just come to university. So they've literally gone through a whole online course about what behaviour we don't tolerate, which is really important for us to like set a precedence as to what students should be doing. In terms of like the disciplinary process, that's also been reformed, and we have a new system called Report and Support, which is an online tool which students can report anonymously for themselves or on behalf of someone else, and also non-anonymously, so they can get support in that process. And that's reporting any incident of sexual misconduct. An advisor from Wellbeing will contact you, arrange an appointment with you. If it's anonymous, then obviously like it's more of a way to disclose, but you've agreed that you don't really want to be contacted. So there's a few things in place. And there's also a new role called the Student Liaison Officer, which means that any student who's in a disciplinary regarding sexual misconduct will have a member of staff holding their hand the entire way, supporting them in everything that they do, giving them help, providing them to counselling. So there's a lot of things that the university have been doing to tackle that.
Yeah.
Something that amazed me was the shared truth that people held surrounding their own welfare. Often, it can be quite an easy way to indulge in your emotions and think that nobody can understand the way that you felt. You are too complex, beyond help. But actually, there are a lot of people that understand what you are going through. Friends to turn to, services to make the most of. They might not work for everyone, but it is wise to give them a try.
Our emotional state cuts through race, gender, and socio-economic standing. Regardless of the objective privileges we have relative to the global south, we tend to take our everyday pleasures for granted. Be grateful for the water that you drink, the food you eat, the education you receive, and the roof over your head. Rationalise how few of these privileges are universal. There are always reasons to be cheerful, and we have to make the most of what we have, even when things are less than ideal and disappointment is frequent. However, this doesn't mean that wealth and status are the keys to happiness. Fulfillment won't always materialise from a successful career.
Because life is way too short to spend your time worrying about deadlines, applications, and not getting enough likes on your last Instagram post. Soak up every experience that you come across. Find purpose in all that you do. Enjoy time with your friends. Goldman Sachs can wait. There is no point rocking up to Canary Wharf in your expensive suit if you're going to ruin it with floods of tears.
Focus on shared experience rather than materialism. Be nice to people and give them the benefit of doubt. You never know what someone is going through. The power of acknowledgement, whether it be a warm smile or an impromptu nod, can never be overstated.
Never underestimate the power of asking somebody how they're doing.
We have left the contact details and websites of useful points of contact for anybody struggling and in need of advice.
We are incredibly grateful to Tiana, Joelle, Jacob and Nightline for offering their invaluable insights. Hopefully, you found them as enlightening as we did. Hopefully, I mean, we're kind of first-time documentary makers,
Yeah.
So obviously, leave your thoughts in the comments below. But be nice.
Like, share, subscribe.
Yeah.